Yeah, I do want to thank the organizers for shoehorning me into the program here at the last minute because it really is a great honor and a privilege and something I feel very strongly about that I to have this opportunity to speak a little bit about my dear friend Russ Dilts, who passed away after sprinting up a hill on the job in the district of Bener Maria in Aceh in November of 2011. About a month and a half before his 60th birthday. Russ left us too soon. Anyway, Russ...
Craig?
Yes?
Sorry to interrupt. Can you speak into the mic because we're taping it?
Okay, we're taping it. Yeah, well,
We can hear you, but...
we'll get the rest of this text on TV. All right, Russ was a VIA giant. He was a VIA legend. In many ways, he was not your typical VIA volunteer. I mean, he came to Stanford on an ROTC scholarship, which he subsequently jettisoned. But then, I mean, he rode a chopped Harley with suicide forks. Russ, he couldn't go out and be a volunteer until he went and worked in the canneries in Alaska to pay off his student loans. Russ was in no way, he had no truck with this sort of obsequious Sami Maon, more Javanese than the Javanese version of cultural sensitivity. Russ felt that people responded to authenticity. And if Russ was nothing else, he was deeply authentic. Russ and I both, we were class of 75 with Johnny. Something about class of 75, there were four of us that stuck around for years. Larry Fisher, Russ Dilts, myself. Ann Hawkins was an honorary member. She came a year later. Anyway, Russ and I were assigned to posts in South Sulawesi. Russ taught English in Makassar. I was an appropriate technologist. I was the king of pig shit in Tanah Toraja. Now, Makassar in those days, or Ujung Pandang as it was known at the time, was a challenging place. The people of Makassar are aggressively gregarious. They were very, very curious. They were very opinionated. They were very loud. No sense of personal space, and they wore me out. You know, and I spent a good deal of time, my first year or so in South Sulawesi, trying to figure out how to say in Indonesian, "Leave me alone." You know? And the fact is, there's no good way to say that in Indonesian. I mean, the best you can come, it sounds like a line in some Cengeng Indonesian pop song, but it doesn't make any sense. I mean, why? You know, if there are people, why would you possibly want to be alone? You know, it just, you know. Now, Russ took it. So while I'm working on that and not getting anywhere, I'm getting incredibly frustrated. Russ had a different approach. You know, Russ, he'd get a cup of coffee in the morning and he'd walk out and he'd greet his people. And he'd get a standing ovation. You know, Russ loved them and they loved him. You know, and that's something he kept going for the next 30 years. And a lesson that took me almost those entire 30 years to learn. But it was a beautiful thing to see. Now, anyway, after a year there, Russ became the VIA coordinator in Jakarta. And he brought considerable energy to that post, and he rationalized it, he regularized it, he stabilized it. All the subsequent coordinators after Russ actually had a place to live, and they had a job description. And he brought some new directions to VIA, some new connections. He sort of started up the whole concept of the English language resource posts and things. He was a major influence on the organization. And Russ was really the face and the soul of VIA Indonesia for the next decade or more. You know, and many, many people came into contact with him. There are many people in this room who were blessed by having met Russ. After that year, during that time, he met a couple people. He met Lou Seri from World Education and Maman Suherman from Penmas, from the Directorate of Non-Formal Education, and they realized that they saw in Russ something very, very special. And they were putting together a project, a little pilot, that was going to pilot innovative non-formal education learning approaches that then would be taken up by a big World Bank project that was coming online. It was called USPI, the Learning Innovations Utilization Unit. You know, and they wanted Russ. And so what they did is they made the job description with the salary so low that only an ex-VIA volunteer would take it. You see? And so Russ became the project manager of the USPI project. And VIA helped me actually secure another volunteer situation at the end of my 2 years in Toraja. I was at the Development Technology Center in Bandung. and I took up with Russ, and the two of us used his $1,000 a month salary. We thought it was a king's ransom. It was fantastic. Now, this was a time of tremendous ferment, you know, of intellectual ferment, political ferment, the creation of new identities. I submit, you know, because we brought together, there was the beginnings of NGOs. People I was working with went on to found WALHI and the Indonesian NGO movement and the Pesantren program. Russ was working with these very innovative non-formal education ideas. I submit that all people doing anything progressive community organizing, progressive social mobilization in Indonesia today can trace their ideological and intellectual roots back to that time and that place. That's Russ's contribution to Indonesia today. Now, he went on, returned to the United States, got a PhD, went back. His next major contribution was he headed up a 13-year program with FAO on integrated pest management and piloted the farmer field school model, which basically turned agricultural extension on its head. And that's become a tremendously important vehicle for community organizing and community mobilization that still is still expanding. You know, it has been practiced in, I found evidence of it in more than 74 different countries and a whole broad array of activities. Russ was an enthusiast. Now, its original Greek meaning, enthusiasm was to be suffused of the spirit of the gods. You know, Socrates thought that enthusiasm was the muse of the poets. Russ was an enthusiast. And everyone that was around Russ was swept up in his vortex of enthusiasm. Whatever Russ was doing was the most interesting, the most important thing in the world. And anyone that was blessed with the opportunity to work with Russ did the best work of their life at that time. I am who I am because, you know, of the years that I spent as a friend of Russ Dilts, you know, and I think there are many people in this room that can share that, you know, and for that I'm extremely grateful. And to VIA for bringing us together, I can't begin to express my gratitude. So thank you.